Thank you for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. I hope you got a glimpse of the full moon last night. It was radiant and beautiful. And through Jewish perspective, the full moon is a time of heightened energy. So it's when the moon's unique influence is most powerful. And because the moon receives its light from the sun, the full moon is a time of strength and receptivity. So we're right now at the peak of receiving radiant light from our source. And we've been exploring in the last 3 times together the month of Adar, of increasing joy, Marbim B'Simcha, increasing in joy and cultivating joy. And so today, on the full moon, and especially on Shushan Purim, this is the heightened energy of our joy. And there's a text written by the Alter Rebbe called the Tanya, and he teaches that not only should we be joyous in the month of Adar, and not only on Shushan Purim and at the heightened energy of the full moon, but that we should aspire to be joyous. We should aspire to be in a state of simcha all the time. And he talks about this in chapter 26. And we even read in Tehillim, serve God with joy in Psalms, to serve God with joy. And this doesn't only mean that while we're doing mitzvahs or while we're serving God, we should be in a joyous state. But in a deeper way, serve God with joy means that being joyous in and of itself is serving the divine, just being in a state of joy. Even in a moment of joy, we are serving God. And the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, considered joy itself to be a mitzvah, to be a divine commandment. And as we know, joy is a wellness practice that we're not only serving God, but we're serving ourselves because it contributes to our health. And we're also uplifting all the people around us. And as at the beginning, we spoke about in the introduction that it is difficult to find joy in painful times. It is really hard to access now, collectively and individually, to find the joy in such suffering. And yet Queen Esther teaches us how to discover joy amidst total uncertainty. In the book of Esther, you may have been at the Megillah readings over Purim. What I found through reading the Megillah is that joy emerged not just from a happy place. It wasn't a happy circumstance, but joy emerged from connecting to purpose. And you can connect to your purpose even amongst tragedy, even amongst difficulty. When Esther went into the palace, she was confronted with so much uncertainty and a disastrous threat to her people. And yet her uncle, Mordecai, really helped her see this difficult situation in a new light. In chapter 4, in the Megillah, in the book of Esther, Mordecai tells Esther that perhaps, Esther, in this difficult moment, this is the reason why you've been created. Perhaps this is your purpose. Right here, right now, this is exactly where you need to be. So it was a joy of connecting to purpose, to stepping into her power. And for us to better understand joy, we can also examine the opposite of joy. I've noticed in my own life and in the people around me that often the root of sadness is a sense of purposelessness or a lack of direction. If you believe your life has no meaning and is just a cluster of random events, that line of thinking could lead to depression. And yet the most joyous people I've seen are the ones who are strongly connected to their mission, their sense of purpose and direction in the world. So how do we fine-tune our joy? Is stepping into our purpose. And we even read in the book of Job that human is born for toil. The nature of us humans is to grow and evolve. So even if something feels hard in life, we can still feel joyful and alive, even amongst the difficulty, because the challenge is what we were born for. Rabbi Dov Ber Pinson teaches a really beautiful linguistic teaching that the word for joy, sameach, is related to the word samach, which means plant. Because to be human means that we're continuously reaching upwards and growing and evolving. So to be joyous means that we're growing, we're sprouting, we're evolving. It's about having a growth mindset. So sameach is connected to samcha, plant. The growth, the evolution, this is what joy feels like. And ultimately, when we connect to our purpose, we attain a state of yeshuv hada'at, which means a settling of consciousness. This is when we have clarity and we know what we need to do in the world. And from there, we can best direct our energy. And the more we have this settled, purposeful awareness, the more we can experience simcha, which is true joy. So this will be the focus of our meditation together, to contemplate the Megillah in our own life story and tune into our purpose and finding joy in our purpose. So how do we do that? I see some people in the chat. So this meditation will help us get there. So let's begin. Welcome, everyone. Find a seat. However feels most comfortable to you. You can lay down, you can sit upright. Just allow yourself to arrive under the light of this full moon in this collective care. Let your body be held by the earth beneath you. And begin to soften your body. Tune into your breath. Notice the inhales and notice the exhales. Letting the breath flow through your system. Arriving here and now in the present. And bringing awareness to your life circumstances right now. Being aware of the challenges, the joys, the uncertainty, all of it. And imagine that Mordechai is whispering to you, just like he did to Esther. Perhaps this is the moment for which you have been created. Perhaps you are exactly where and what you need to be. Absorb his words. Let his message sink into your body. Perhaps this is your moment. Let every breath receive his words and message, just like the moon receives its light from the sun. And maybe you're unclear right now where your purpose is, your next steps, your pathway forward. So if you're feeling that stuckness, just notice where the energetic experience lies in your body. Where do you feel it? Just being the investigator. And perhaps as you notice where this heightened energy of stuckness is in your body, you can begin to breathe towards that area. A breath of softening, of compassion and love. Sending breath as a way to welcome in clarity very soon. Picturing the breath, soothing the body, sending calming waves. And give yourself permission to just let go. Just ease into your body. See if you can soften the backs of your eyes, relax the back of the jaw. And with this softening, I'll ask you some questions, trusting what comes up for you, being the witness for whatever comes up on the screen, being curious and inviting these questions in a very joyous way, like, ooh, what if? And I'll ask you to be a kind witness to your responses. So take another deep breath. If you had only 1 year left on this earth, what would you do? Keep the breath nice and slow as you're just observing what comes up. Noticing where you would be, who you would be with, and what that joy would feel like as you trust. Now ask yourself this: If you had 1 month left on this earth, what would you do? Where would you go? What would bring you joy? Now ask yourself this. If you had 1 week left on this earth, you could do anything. What would you do? Observing if things are getting at all more specific. Now ask yourself this. If you had one last day, what would you do on that day in a joyous, free way? What would be most important? Now ask yourself this. If you had 1 hour and you could do anything, what would you do in that hour? Trusting whatever comes up first. Now ask yourself this. If you had one last breath, one last thing to share with others and yourself, what would you say? What would be the most important words to share? Observing all that has come up for you, answering all these questions. I invite you to set an intention that supports what is most important to you on this path. a shift in what you need to do. If you could take that risk and step into your power and trust that path, set an intention that supports you. A word, a phrase, or even that last sentence to share with others and yourself. What would you like to take with you forward? And as Queen Esther did, breathe with the sense of renewed purpose through your being. Fueling your body with your purposeful breath. Let this purpose unite your head and your heart. And then your heart through your fingertips. In a full cocoon of awareness. Feel that sense of purpose, joy, appreciation blossom through you. And bring your palms to your heart center to bring in this affirmation. Thank yourself for giving the time to ponder what is most important and how you can live a life aligned with your purpose with the utmost joy. We'll take a deep collective inhale, bringing in that purposeful breath, pumping it through your body. And a deep, relaxing exhale, sinking into this purpose. And gently open your eyes. You're welcome to share in the chat what your affirmation is if you choose to, or you can keep it to yourself. But thank you for practicing.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for that really beautiful and profound practice. I think that I don't know if the chat is open yet, but it will be shortly. But for now, let's seal that practice as we do by offering an opportunity for those who are in mourning, observing a yard site. You can put the name or names of those you're remembering now in the chat, either now or after you recite Kaddish. If you're not reciting Kaddish, please stay present for those who are. Thanks to Rachel for sharing the words for the Kaddish on the screen. And if you're joining me, please rise in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash.
Amen. Ishme Rabba Vora Lama Maya
Shalom b'mrumav, shalom b'kol Yisrael, Kol Yisrael, Kol Yishmael, God call your faith in there. Amen.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you're leaving us now, I'm putting in the chat. Well, I put it earlier, I guess. Our lineup for teachers for the rest of this week. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by Rabbi Dorothy Richmond, who'll be leading us. And on Wednesday, Dr. David Gottlieb of Spertus College in Chicago. Thursday, we'll be joined by Rabbi Mira Neshama Weil, joining us from Israel. And on Friday, we'll close out the week, sit into Shabbat with Rabbi Brian Yosef Schachter Brooks. So we look forward to a beautiful week of practice, a great start today. It's wonderful, just wonderful teaching and practice that we'll explore in a moment with Jenna Zadaka of At the Well. And if you're leaving us now, hope you stay safe and well. Hope we'll see you tomorrow. If you have a question you'd like to put to Jenna, please put that in the chat. But why don't we just start by, as Jenna invited, if you haven't already, if you want to put your affirmation that came up in the chat. It's beautiful to read these, really extraordinary. That was really, Jenna, there's so many things that came up for me. Was a lot of associations, those that but first I want to begin with this, actually. If you could take us through the sequence of the questions one more time. You kind of winnowed it down to, if we just had one day, right? Or just had one breath left, really what we would say. You started with, I was like so in it. Where did we start?
We started with if you had 1 year left on this
Year,
earth.
right.
And we went to if you had 1 month left on this earth. Then if you had 1 week left on this earth. If you had 1 day left on this earth. If you had 1 hour left. And then if you had 1 last breath.
Right.
And I think that process is helping to become more specific and acute.
But also, I thought, and really, when we start with, like, if I had a year, then it's likely to think about, like, well, what can I do? What would I do in that year, right? And I was thinking, well, not everybody has options about what they can do or where they can go or what they can see, right? Or what they can accomplish. But that's where my mind went. Where would I go? What would I do? What would I try to gather in? But when it gets down to, there's not time to actually do anything or go anywhere, then it really comes down to the purpose is really just being, right? And it struck me that you really touched on something that lifts up the connection between Yom Kippur and Purim. Like, these are questions that would be perfect pre-Yom Kippur questions also. And of course, in our tradition, the two holidays are linked in some strange way, right? Yom Kippur is like a Yom Kippurim that's like Purim in some way. So that was one. I wanted to see if you wanted to say anything more about that. But also, it doesn't sound, people don't associate joy with Yom Kippur, but actually, I think it applies there too. And if you want to say anything about the Yom Kippur part, because Yom Kippur is kind of in a way, for those who have been around, the couple of sits we usually do before Yom Kippur, has been co-sponsored by the Shomer Collective, which addresses issues around end-of-life issues and dying, and so that is kind of a focus. But it's really about, what I love about this is that it lifts up the idea of there being joy, not in like what I might be able to cram into the last, amount of time I have left, but just being and just expressing, where you asked for that affirmation. I was thinking, it's really thinking about what do we want our last words to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking love, just want to say, I love you, to loved ones or to the universe in some way.
Yeah, and it really spoke to me. Someone in the chat said, after this meditation, I'm going to buy some bubbles to share with my granddaughter.
Saw that.
And that just really, really touched me. And I think both Yom Kippur, the practices are about stripping away all of the external and extraneous and getting to the bare minimum of our essential self.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also at our essential self, we have just a joy of being alive with love and presence. And this act of buying bubbles to share with your granddaughter, it's like if you had one last breath, like that sounds like a perfect act of love and connection and presence. And some people may notice that theirs were the same throughout all of
Mm-hmm.
these. First time I did this meditation, it was actually my answer didn't change. It just became more and more real and alive, like acute. But it weaved my vision was the same response, just weaved in through these different time containers.
The word that came up for me was that I just felt intense in that sense of like this concentration, like it was like this bringing all together. What I love about the bubbles example is that it's not a thing that, bubbles are the most ephemeral thing, right? That doesn't last, right? The bubbles pop, they're gone, but they're great because there's so much joy. Kids have so much joy in bubbles, and the grown-ups too, of course, not just vicariously. They're fun. Bubbles are fun, and yet they're gone. Like they don't hold forever. So I love that as an example.
Yeah, it reminds me of the breath, which is very ephemeral. It comes and goes, it's sweeping through us, but that is our connection to being alive, is
Mhm.
that ephemeral existence.
Yeah. Laura's asking this question, which I think is very related. The last question, one last breath, brought me to weeping. It felt more about love as opposed to purpose. I want to lift that up too. So like that phrase, that also listening to the Megillah on Purim this year, that phrase, that those words from Mordechai to Esther that you like lifted up, like felt unbelievably intense to me. Mio Deo, who knows if eight kazot, a moment like this zot, you ascended, to this position, but it's such a universal question. So what do you think about love as opposed to purpose? Or maybe it's both. Maybe that answers its own. Maybe it's a question that answers itself.
Yeah, I think what came up for me in the meditation was like my purpose is my love in presence with my loved ones. And that love really drives our purpose. And sometimes we lose sight of that and we get swept away with all of the to-dos of the world. But I do think Esther's stepping into her purpose was also an act of love for her life, of course, to like love of life, to stay alive, and love of her people and love of the divine, giving her this opportunity. So I love that you brought this up of how deeply purpose and love is aligned for some of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you responded in the chat, but maybe we lift this up a little bit too, to Irene's question about finding purpose. I mean, you also began with this too, the larger question that we got these 2 months of Adar, right? We had, the Purim Katan, a month ago, and it's just been a long Adar. We've been in Adar for a long time. And with this topic of, well, how do you find joy? And, in these days it's so hard. But specifically, regardless of what's going on in the world, in Israel and Gaza and the world in general, the question of, in a time of constriction, illness, infirmity, frailty, when, our physical being and life can shrink. Um, it seems to me that you're suggesting the possibility of finding purpose and joy in being a loving presence alone, in just the breath, in just that intention, and just being as loving as possible in the moment. That's no less of a purpose than someone who's got a big agenda in the world, or it can make a big, impact in the world in some way.
Yeah. And I can't find the comment right now, but I remember her saying that the difficulty, or what I felt was the challenge in finding purpose after a sickness or after a huge shift in life.
Mhm.
And it reminded me of a story of someone yesterday that on Purim, I was speaking with someone who was going through chemo with breast cancer, and she was sick for many, many weeks in bed and hadn't gone outside. And she finally, like one day, had energy to walk outside. And as she did, there was a bunch of people around, hovering around a tree, and there was wildlife protection there. There was a mountain lion in the tree right around her corner, and she felt safe to go. She was excited to like see it, because there was, there was protection there. And she went to the tree and she looked at the mountain lion, and she said, after being in bed for weeks with chemo, she saw the mountain lion look at her and then look down and then look up, like he was bowing at her. And she right then said, like, this is divine providence. Like, the moment I step outside after suffering and challenge for so long, I see this like grand, majestic creature bow to me, of like, I see you and your greatness. And that felt like such a purposeful moment, that sometimes just surviving and brings out our utmost strength and courage, and we are able to come to a place that we would never get to without that challenge or sickness. So I don't want to say, like, I don't want to belittle the suffering that you're
Mhm.
going through, whoever put that in the chat, because no one would ask for that to happen. And yet those challenges often bring out something really deep and profound in us.
Yeah, absolutely. Lori writes, I had the feeling as she was going in the terms of the meditation, I had the feeling throughout my body and heart space in that last hour and last breath that purpose no longer matters, that it becomes far in the background. Instead, energy, love, loyalty, and connection are all that matter, that all becomes one, whether or not our brain knows a quote unquote purpose. And I really love that. And again, once again, that kind of lifts up this kind of Yom Kippur consciousness, I think. In the same way, it kind of points to this connection, that what we talk about when we talk about purpose, maybe the English word is can be problematic because it sounds like there's something I got to do, there's something I've got to get done, right? And it's revealed in a little bit by the meditation as an illusion, or the case of those of us for whom there's a lot we can do per se, but that experiencing that manifesting love, loyalty, connection, just being present, like you're describing that in that mountain lion, this woman in the mountain lion, it's like nothing sharpens the present, puts you more in the moment than an experience like that, right? And that all of those things combine in that, the love, the presence, awareness, purpose also.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
Um,
think it takes the pressure away on Purim to be in a state of ecstatic joy, or have only good circumstances in Adar, because it can feel hard to come into Adar with this directive to be joyous. And a lot of us are not in joyful circumstances. Yet we can more subtly find joy by connecting with purpose.
yeah. All right. I mean, the chat, what you're saying is beautiful. What's in the chat is also beautiful. Lori Harris points out beautifully that the question is part of the question is taking that awareness, the awareness that's formed in that moment, that clarity of connection, presence, love, loyalty, etc. In these moments, how do we bring it into everyday living? How do we sustain it in a way? How does it inform the rest of our day? So we have an experiment, we have an opportunity to experiment with that today, to the extent to which people experience that as they might at the end of Yom Kippur, or Mary Oliver's Wild Geese poem, right? About what are you going to do with your one precious life, which is kind of if Mary Oliver were writing the Megillah, I guess that's what Mordecai would say to Queen Esther. And then Laurie's response, which is just so beautiful. We should read this out loud. Does a beautiful, strong redwood tree with far-reaching connecting roots seek its purpose, or does it just grow, connect, and be still in the cathedral of just being?
Ooh, that sounds like a poem. So
It is,
beautiful.
Laurie, that's it. That is a keeper. That's a keeper. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Jenna, well, you prompted just so much, beautiful outpouring here of feeling, touching into exactly where we needed to go. So we needed Shushan Purim. We needed that reflected light of the full moon. And thank you so much. May it bring you, may it be reflected back to you as now the moon begins to wane, and we go back, and then we eventually get to the month of Nisan in 2 weeks. And believe it or not, everyone, Pesach a month from today. So we're looking forward to the rest of our lunar journey through the next month. And thank you so much, as always, Jenna, for this beautiful practice.
Thank you for having me. Purim Sameach, happy full moon, everybody.
Back to you. And thanks so much. Thanks, Rachel, for holding our space together, and each of you for being here. And we'll hope to see you tomorrow to practice with Dorothy Richmond. Be well, everyone.